I knew I was officially ghost-level invisible when I caught Drew Googling how to depreciate office furniture during a client meeting, and I was the one who got the follow-up thank you email. Thanks, Donna. Great insights today. Valerie chirped back, copying half the executive team. The guy didn't know the difference between net income and a napkin sketch, and I was the one holding the whole damn ship together with Excel sheets, duct tape, and willpower. But sure, let's pretend Drew's sparkle smile and firm handshake were the driving force behind our $14 million client migration. 12 years. That's how long I gave to Pexton and Hale. Long enough to have my own little cubicle rituals. The 9:13 a.m. coffee from the machine that always sputtered once before working, the Thursday donut split with Janice from audit, the way my keyboard clacked louder than anyone else's, like even my typing was begging to be noticed. And yet somehow I'd become a background process, essential but unacknowledged, like the office Wi-Fi password taped under the printer. Useful but forgettable. Valerie came in like a scented candle explosion, flawless bob, PowerPoint pep talks, and just enough buzzwords to make people think she was brilliant. Agile synergies, revenue-positive pivots, culture-first realignment. God, she loved the word realignment, was her go-to when she was about to gut a team and hand its beating heart to one of her corporate boy toys. And Drew? Drew was the poster child of Valerie's bright future initiative. 29, smug as hell, and dumb enough to think QuickBooks was a coffee shop loyalty program. I trained him anyway, because that's what I did. I made messes disappear, covered gaps, ran the numbers until the math whispered the truth no one wanted to hear. But something about training Drew felt like teaching a raccoon to do your taxes, adorably hopeless and likely to end in disaster. He asked questions like, "What's the difference between a write-off and a write-down?" while simultaneously correcting me on my tone in meetings. One time I handed him a report and he asked if the numbers auto-sorted themselves every morning. I told him yes, just like the coffee machine reads our dreams. And yet, I smiled. I smiled because people like Valerie mistake silence for weakness. They think if you don't bark back, you must be declawed. But I was watching, listening. Valerie's praise for Drew came too fast, too rehearsed. The sudden invites to partner meetings. The way his errors vanished from the audit trail like someone was vacuuming his incompetence in real time. She was shielding him, and I was going to find out why. But I didn't rush. That's the thing about being underestimated. It buys you time, so I played along. Let them think Donna was the reliable ghost, floating between spreadsheets and board decks, too loyal or too lazy to ask for more. By the way, if you're still listening and enjoying this quiet little storm I'm about to unleash, go ahead and tap that subscribe button and give this story a like. It really does keep this twisted train chugging. And let's be honest, 90% of you are lurking like Valerie in a quarterly review. Don't be that person. Anyway, my moment came on a Wednesday around 4:07 p.m. when I noticed a change log entry in our internal compliance portal. It was tiny, insignificant, a timestamp with no initials, just a silent update to Drew's credential file. And that's when I knew something smelled off, like a rose-scented cover-up for regulatory rot. I clicked, screenshotted, archived, and backed it up to a drive no one knew existed. I wasn't sure yet what the game was. But I knew two things: Valerie was lying, and Drew wasn't just dumb. He was dangerous in a way only protected mediocrity can be, polished, packaged, and perched high enough to fall hard. And me? I stayed quiet, like a fuse, waiting. I've seen a lot of dumb things in my career. Like the time a junior analyst accidentally sent a wine meme to a federal regulator, or when our old COO called a client mom on a Zoom. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for the circus act that was Q2 Town Hall. Valerie strutted on stage like she'd just personally discovered the cure for inefficiency, wearing a blazer so white it practically glowed with delusion. And Drew? He stood beside her like a Labrador who'd just learned to sit. She clinked her water bottle to get everyone's attention. "We're thrilled to announce some leadership changes that reflect our new direction," she beamed. "Please join me in congratulating Drew Bailey on his promotion to Senior Director of Financial Strategy." I blinked. My ears buzzed. Then I smiled, not because I was happy, but because if I didn't smile, I'd start laughing or screaming. There was this pause in the room, one of those corporate silences where everyone blinks at once and tries to figure out if they misheard. Then the polite clapping started. Too soft, too slow. Janice from audit looked at me with her eyebrows doing cartwheels. Kevin from IT mouthed WTF, so big it looked like a cheer. Drew, bless his overconfident soul, took the mic like he was accepting a Nobel Prize. Wow, he chuckled, holding the mic with both hands like it might fly away. "This is, incredible. I just want to thank Donna for everything. Honestly, she taught me so much." He turned to me with that smirk that makes you want to throw a chair through a window. "I mean, she really paved the way." I smiled wider. "Congratulations," I said, loud enough for the front row to hear but just clipped enough to slice. "Don't forget to file your Form 2849 this time. You know how messy compliance can get." A couple of people snorted. Valerie stiffened. I kept smiling. What I didn't do was storm out. What I didn't do was make a scene. Because here's the thing about being underestimated. They think you don't see it coming. They think you'll just nod, cry in your cubicle, Maybe rage eat a bagel in the break room and go quietly into that HR sign good night. They don't expect you to start digging. After the celebration, while Valerie was too busy fawning over Drew's vision and Drew was probably updating his LinkedIn with inspirational hashtags, I went back to my desk, logged in, and started pulling old HR files like a librarian with a vendetta. First, his onboarding documents. Sloppy, incomplete. One of the HR interns had uploaded a PDF of his CPA cert without a signature. Timestamp, June, but his first sign-off on company financials, March. That little wrinkle might have slipped by the sleep-deprived HR team, but not me. Next, I checked the change logs. When was the file updated? Who touched it? Something wasn't adding up, and my gut, after 12 years of surviving this place, knew that when you smell smoke in a firm like this, someone's burning more than toast. I saved copies, backed them up, started my own private little audit trail. Drew thought I paved the way. He had no idea I was laying landmines. And Valerie, she thought I'd be too proud or too tired to notice the knife in my back. That's the thing about quiet people. We may not yell. We always write things down. By the end of the day, I wasn't angry. I was amused because now I knew I wasn't crazy. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't bitter or jealous or stuck in the past. I was right, and they just handed me the matchbook. All I had to do was wait. It was raining the day I found it, not in some metaphorical, poetic way, no, literal rain. Office parking lot looked like a swamp, my shoes squeaked with every step, and the ceiling vent above my desk started dripping like the building was as tired of this place as I was. But none of that mattered, because tucked between compliance reports and licensing verifications, I found the line that changed everything. Drew Bailey. CPA credential number hash hash hash. Date issued June 29. My eyes did that thing they do when something's wrong, blink, squint, scan again, faster this time. My brain fired off a memory like a file retrieval system gone rogue. March 14th, Drew's initials on the quarterly reconciliation report. His signature, in Comic Sans, no less, on page 6. Approval date, March 12. He signed off 3 months before that license existed. My stomach didn't drop. My jaw didn't clench. I didn't scream or gasp or punch a wall like people do in movies. I just stared at the screen and thought, of course. Of course he lied. Of course he didn't have the credentials. Of course he was promoted anyway. What really twisted the knife, though, was the edit trail. I dug in, pulled up the change history. The compliance status had been marked verified on April 2nd, but not by an automated system, not by HR's internal compliance integration. It was a manual entry. Someone had gone in and changed his status by hand. No initials, no notes, just a ghost in the system covering someone else's lie. And if you don't think that kind of thing matters, you've never sat through a financial review with an SEC rep breathing down your neck. Falsified licensing doesn't just invalidate a report, it nukes it, retroactively. Every client touched by that period becomes a risk exposure. Every investor presentation becomes a potential class action. But don't worry, Drew had the right attitude. I stared at my monitor, rain tapping like Morse code on the window, and felt something cold and precise settle inside me. This wasn't about getting my job back. This wasn't about justice or vindication or some tired speech about ethics. This was leverage, the kind that doesn't evaporate under pressure, the kind that spreads. I opened a fresh document. Subject, ethics memo, credential discrepancy, CPA licensing timeline. I kept it simple, bullet points. Facts, no accusations, just enough to raise a question, just enough to be dangerous. I included screenshots, compliance timestamps, report dates, cross-references to Drew's access logs and approval trails. No conclusions, just connections. I uploaded the memo into the internal compliance archive using my admin credentials, ones I still had access to because, funny enough, no one had noticed I was still listed as a compliance liaison from a project 3 years ago. It was one of those lazy clerical oversights that usually means nothing. Today, it meant everything. Once uploaded, I generated a system timestamp. Immutable, audit traceable, embedded with my user ID. Then I downloaded a copy, encrypted it, and saved it to my personal drive. 3 copies, cloud, USB, offline backup. Not because I was paranoid, because I was thorough. Then I sat back in my chair and looked around the office, watching as everyone went about their lives, oblivious to the grenade ticking in the server. Across the floor, Valerie was laughing with Drew, her manicured hand on his shoulder like she'd raised him from birth. He was beaming, probably because he'd just figured out how to embed a chart into PowerPoint without breaking into a sweat. They had no idea. I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to confront. I had filed my truth in a place they couldn't unwrite it. Landmine waiting for trigger. All I had to do now was wait for someone to step on it. The invite came via Slack, like everything else in this sterile circus of forced enthusiasm. Hey Donna, smiling face with smiling eyes, coffee later? Just a quick chat. Bring your warmth. That was Valerie's favorite emoji. The smiley face that felt like a middle finger dipped in glitter. I knew the moment I saw it that she wasn't inviting me for coffee. She was inviting me to my own burial. Still, I went. I wore the navy blazer I kept on the back of my door for executive moments, pulled my hair into a low bun, and walked into the cafe conference room like I didn't already know the script. I've seen this play before. They just changed the cast. Valerie sat there pretending to sip a cappuccino, flipping through something in her lap like she hadn't rehearsed every word a dozen times. Next to her sat Meredith from HR, clipboard, legal pad, eyes already glassy like she was trying to disassociate from the inevitable. Donna, Valerie purred, gesturing to the chair across from her like we were about to bond over matching yoga injuries. First off, I just want to thank you. You've done so much for the company. Here we go. The landscape is shifting, she continued, her tone carefully balanced between fake empathy and passive-aggressive cheer, realigning some core teams to reflect a more agile future. And unfortunately, she folded her hands like a kindergarten teacher explaining gravity. Some roles are being sunset. Sunset, that word again. As if erasing 12 years of blood and deliverables was just a pastel fade into tomorrow. We're offering you a very generous transition package, she said, sliding a cream folder across the table. It includes full benefits through the quarter, a 3-month salary cushion, and of course our gratitude. I opened the folder, scanned. No NDA, no non-compete, no clawback clause. I blinked. Either someone in legal was asleep at the wheel or Valerie thought I'd go out quietly. She thought the offer would make me feel grateful, like being handed a fancy bottle of water after being hit by a car. For half a second, I felt it, the heat in my cheeks, the sharp rise of rage in my throat. I imagined grabbing the cappuccino and flinging it across the table, imagined shouting about fraud, about Drew's fake credentials, about the memo sitting quietly in the archive like a coiled snake. But then something clicked. This wasn't an insult. This was a gift, because here's the thing, they didn't know what I'd filed. They didn't know I'd already burned the fuse. By letting me walk with full access to my files, my credentials still intact, no legal gag in place, he had handed me the keys to the castle and left the drawbridge down. I leaned back in my chair and smiled. Thank you, I said. Valerie blinked. I really appreciate the opportunity, I added, signing the last page with a practiced flourish. I'll start packing up this afternoon. I stood, smoothed my jacket, gave Meredith a look that said you better pray you're just a bystander in what comes next, and walked out. No fight. No grand exit speech, just the soft click of the folder closing behind me and the silence of someone who knows exactly what comes next. Let them think they'd won. Let them toast their realignment and celebrate their golden boy. They didn't know I'd already slipped the blade. And the cut was coming. The next morning, the office smelled like catered mediocrity, soggy pastries, over-chilled champagne, and the faint desperation of bad decisions polished until they sparkled. I wasn't technically supposed to be there. My badge still worked because, once again, Valerie's people were too busy planning to notice anything operational. A fitting metaphor, really. They could build the stage but never check the foundation. Valerie had commandeered the main boardroom. She stood in front of the company's core leadership team, lifting a flute of champagne like she'd just landed us on the moon. Her voice floated out into the hall even before I pushed the door open. New leadership? Leaner, younger, bolder, she beamed, like a spokesperson for a really smug juice cleanse. This is a new era for Pexton and Hale, and I couldn't be more excited to introduce the team that will carry us forward. Applause, weak, scattered. Most people clapped because they thought they should. I walked in right as Drew stepped forward to say a few words. His sport coat was too tight in the shoulders and his grin looked stapled to his face. He was trying to project confidence, but his eyes darted toward the CFO every few seconds, like a kid asking if he was doing it right. Thanks everyone, Drew said, holding up his own glass. We've been working hard on streamlining operations and, cleaning up legacy messes. Some people chuckled. A few looked down. Valerie laughed too loud. I walked in without announcing myself. No folder, no laptop bag, just a slim, manila envelope in my hand. The kind of thing that doesn't scream, doesn't threaten, doesn't demand attention. It waits. I stepped around the table quietly, made my way toward CFO Mark, who sat at the far end, nursing his champagne like it was a chore, and gently placed the folder by his right hand. He looked up, startled. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. Then I walked to the back of the room and leaned against the wall. Not hiding, not intruding. Just present. Mark glanced around, clearly trying to decide if this was part of the presentation. He opened the folder with the careful fingers of someone disarming a trap. One page. One sentence, bold, black-centered. Formal ethics memo filed April 14 time-stamped. He read it. Blink. He read it again. Valerie was mid-sentence, something about turning the page, when Mark lifted his hand, interrupting her like he was pressing pause on the entire company. What's today's date? He asked softly. The room stilled. Someone coughed. Valerie froze, flute halfway to her lips. October 1st? Silence bloomed like mold on drywall. Mark's face didn't change, but his posture did, slowly straightening like something ancient had just clicked into place in his spine. Excuse me, he said, standing. I need to speak with legal, now. He didn't look at Drew, didn't look at Valerie, just left the room with the folder in hand, like a man carrying a live grenade. Drew blinked, looking genuinely confused. Valerie's smile faltered. Mark, is everything okay? He didn't answer, neither did I, because some people deliver their messages with a speech. Me? I deliver mine in 10-point font, dated, verified, and legally archived. And that morning, I didn't need to raise my voice. My folder had already started screaming. Mark didn't come back for 27 minutes. Long enough for the champagne to go flat, for the mini quiches to sweat through their doilies, and for Drew to start nervously rearranging the pens at his seat like it was a logic puzzle he could actually solve. Valerie tried to save the vibe, launching into a weak anecdote about disruptive innovation she'd already used at last quarter's leadership offsite. Nobody was listening. The room had changed. You could feel it in the air, like a pressure drop before a tornado. When the door finally opened, Mark walked back in with two people trailing behind him, Jenna from Legal and Naveen, our internal compliance officer. Both looked like they hadn't blinked since the elevator. Mark didn't sit. He didn't touch his drink. He just held the manila folder like it was a radioactive artifact and placed it in the center of the table like a ritual offering. Can someone confirm the date? He asked flatly. October 1st, said Naveen, checking his watch out of habit. The memo, Mark said, tapping the cover page, was filed April 14th. Officially time-stamped. Indexed in the internal compliance archive. He looked straight at Valerie. It predates the Q2 investor report. The words hung in the air like carbon monoxide. Silent, lethal. Valerie opened her mouth, then closed it. She glanced at Drew, whose eyes had gone cartoon-wide, and then to Jenna, who was already flipping open her laptop, typing furiously. That can't be right, Valerie said, her voice thinning at the edges. It is, Naveen confirmed, pulling up the log file. Timestamp is clean, no overrides, no delayed syncs. This isn't a new upload, it's been there for months. And just like that, the tremor became an earthquake. You see, filing an ethics memo is one thing. Filing it before a quarterly financial disclosure, before certifying compliance to shareholders, the SEC, and the GOTM market, is a whole other beast. Now we weren't talking about hypotheticals. We were talking liability. Real, documented, irrefutable exposure. And on this day, October 1st, the firm's Q3 investor attestation was due by end of business. Valerie's toast now sounded like the opening statement in her own deposition. I wasn't aware of any memo, she said quickly, too quickly. Jenna stopped typing. You were CC'd. That stopped the whole room. Excuse me. Valerie blinked. Jenna spun her laptop toward her. Click, scroll, click. The original submission to compliance was also emailed to your direct address along with Drew's credential file attachments. April 14th, 2:47 p.m. Valerie swallowed so hard you could hear it. Drew looked like he wanted to slide under the table. It must have gone to spam, he muttered. Nobody laughed. Mark exhaled through his nose, then sat down slowly, like the weight of the firm had suddenly settled directly on his chest. I need everyone who was on the compliance chain to freeze any further sign-offs for Q3. Effective immediately, he said, and we need to talk about how this impacts our forward-facing communications. Translation, we just stepped into a landmine field wearing tap shoes. Valerie tried to regroup. Let's not overreact, I don't think you understand. Jenna cut in, calm but firm. If we certified compliance under false credentials, and this memo predates that certification, then we're not just exposed. We're potentially in breach of multiple investor trust clauses and public disclosure obligations. Drew's hand went up like he was in kindergarten. Wait, are you saying I did something illegal? No, Drew, I said quietly from the back of the room, breaking my silence for the first time. I'm saying Valerie let you. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was surgical. And for the first time I saw it, the flicker of fear in Valerie's eyes. Not panic, not guilt, fear. Because it was no longer a matter of damage control. It was a matter of who was going to bleed first. The moment Mark stepped out with legal, the boardroom turned into a holding pen for nervous executives pretending to still have jobs. Phones stayed face down. Eyes darted toward the door like someone was about to deliver a verdict, and everyone knew they might be next. I stood in the back, watching it all unfold like someone watching the last 10 minutes of a crime documentary they already knew the ending to. Drew leaned back in his chair like it was all just a quirky misunderstanding between friends. This is ancient, he muttered to no one in particular. I mean, the CPA stuff, that was months ago. It got fixed, right? No one answered. He looked around again, searching for eye contact like it might bail him out. But even the interns were pretending to read their notes now. Valerie didn't speak. She just sat there, statue still, a hand on her champagne glass that she hadn't touched since Mark asked the question. I didn't bother saying anything else. I didn't need to. I was already done. By the time legal reached the corner conference room, I was back at my desk, calmly packing the last of my things. My drawer contents looked surgical, just a few mechanical pencils, a backup charger, a printout of an old client thank you email I kept for morale on bad days. I folded my jacket over my arm, shut the laptop, and reached for my phone. One last step, Slack. I opened the admin dashboard. Yes, I still had it, another oops from the systems team, and navigated to my own account. User Donna Ellis. Status, active. I hit deactivate and watched the status bar go gray. A small thing really, but satisfying, like signing your own release form from a job you'd already outgrown. I didn't log out. I didn't send a farewell message. I just disappeared. Back upstairs, the boardroom door opened again, not with urgency, but with that careful, controlled slowness of a situation spiraling behind the scenes. HR entered. Not the generalist they sent in Bonnie, one with the quiet eyes and laminated folders. She crossed straight to Valerie. Could we speak for a moment? She asked, low but audible. Valerie stood. Her face stayed composed, but her spine betrayed her, rigid and locked. She followed Bonnie out without a word. No one said goodbye, no one asked where they were going, they all knew. The door clicked shut behind them. Silence again. Except this time the energy wasn't tense, it was hollow. Like everyone was waiting for the lights to flicker and a different nameplate to appear on Valerie's office door. Mark didn't return, neither did legal. The meeting never resumed. No next steps, no summary, no thank you all, just quiet dispersion. Like the building itself had exhaled and decided enough was enough. By the time I reached the elevator, I saw two people whispering near the kitchen. One of them had already pulled up LinkedIn. Another was texting with fast, frantic fingers. At the exit, I paused, not to reflect, not to say goodbye, just to mark the moment. 12 years. 12 years of keeping this company's skeletons sorted and its ledgers clean, of watching mediocrity get promoted while integrity got parked. And all it took was one well-placed document to start the avalanche. I didn't smile. I didn't feel vindicated or victorious. What I felt was done, not just with them, but with needing anything from people like them ever again. My revenge wasn't fire or fury. It was institutional. It was time-stamped. The call came just after 7 o'clock p.m. I was sitting on my porch, shoes off, sipping lukewarm tea that tasted like resignation and chamomile. My inbox had already started to fill with out-of-office auto-replies, panicked requests for project files, and one beautifully unhinged "what the hell is going on" email from Drew, complete with no punctuation and a crying emoji. Then the phone buzzed. Unknown number, Manhattan area code. I let it ring twice before I picked up. Donna, the voice was low, careful. I recognized it immediately, Brad Teller, one of the founding partners. You only heard from him when a whale client was on the line or someone's head was being prepped for platter. Brad, I said calmly, like I hadn't just kicked over the foundation of his leadership team 12 hours ago. Off the record, he started, and I smiled. They always lead with that when they're about to ask you to fix something they ignored until it became radioactive. Would you, hypothetically, be open to consulting with us on a short-term advisory basis? I paused. Not while Valerie has an office, I said. Silence, not awkward. Just long enough to feel the implications settle. I see Brad replied, that's clear, thank you, we hung up. I didn't pace. I didn't second guess. I turned the phone over and looked at the ceiling of the sky, felt the crisp fall air press against my skin and exhaled. I'd already won. I didn't need a crown. But power, when it comes knocking politely instead of kicking down your door, that's when it gets interesting. 2 hours later, an email arrived. No preamble, no fluff, just a simple, clean PDF offer labeled Revised Engagement Terms D. Ellis. I opened it on my laptop, scrolling slowly, deliberately. Base rate, generous. Scope, regulatory oversight and investor compliance review. Reporting structure, direct to audit committee. That meant bypassing all the messy middle, no Valerie, no Drew, no damage control department spinning their wheels. And then, nestled halfway down the page, like a pearl tucked in the middle of a concrete wall, no non-disclosure agreement required. I read it 3 times. They weren't just asking me back, they were giving me freedom. Voice. Leverage, they wanted my insight without my silence. They were offering me a seat at the table they once told me didn't exist. It wasn't just an offer, it was a white flag, and it was smart. Because they knew I didn't want noise. I didn't want vengeance selfies or LinkedIn monologues about speaking truth to power. I just wanted the space to act without interference and the clarity to choose who was worth saving. I closed the laptop. Didn't respond right away. I wasn't in a rush. Because now they needed me to decide where the cleanup begins and where the reckoning ends. I was no longer the woman they forgot to CC. I was the name on the signature line. The emergency board call wasn't optional, and it wasn't discreet. Calendars updated overnight, invites blasted at 6:12 a.m., and by 8 o'clock sharp, every name that mattered was logged into a sterile Zoom call with black suits, tight jaws, and eyes that had clearly read something damning in the past 24 hours. CFO Mark opened the meeting with no pleasantries. His screen shared before anyone could even clear their throat. The PDF title read, Q3 Investor Certification, Revised Filing Addendum. He didn't look nervous. He looked finished with everyone's bullshit. This revised disclosure includes an updated compliance clause, he said, voice flat. Her internal documentation filed on April 14th and verified last week. Our prior Q2 certification was materially inaccurate. Therefore, we are, effective immediately, refiling our Q3 financial report under guidance from legal and audit. Silence. No one blinked. Mark continued. We are also announcing personnel changes. Valerie Langford is placed on indefinite leave pending further investigation. Drew Bailey is under internal review and is no longer authorized to approve or submit any financial documentation. No gasps, just the audible sound of executives mentally updating their LinkedIn bios. And Mark added, Donna Ellis has been appointed as an external compliance consultant to the audit committee. She will report directly to this board moving forward. I didn't smile, didn't flinch. My camera stayed off. Brad, the same partner who called me off the record, nodded slightly. The kind of nod that says, we see you now? Please don't burn us down. The meeting wrapped in 11 minutes. No closing statements, just an exit, swift and silent, like a company trying to outrun its own shadow. At 9:07 a.m., I returned to the office for one final task. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to see it just once, before I disappeared from their version of the story entirely. The glass boardroom was half-lit, chairs in disarray, abandoned coffee cups still sweating on the table. Valerie stood inside. She looked smaller somehow. Her usually perfect posture slouched. Her reflection in the glass was paler than the real thing. She stared out, but not at me, through me, like I was a ghost she'd summoned and now couldn't banish. I walked by without slowing, didn't meet her eyes, didn't speak. Need to, because this wasn't her story anymore. In the parking lot, the wind tugged gently at my coat as I unlocked my car, slid into the driver's seat, and let the silence settle. No playlist, no radio, just the soft hum of engine and aftermath. Then my phone buzzed. One text, Mark, thank you, you saved us. I stared at it, typed slowly. Me, no, I just didn't let you bury me. Sent. The screen dimmed. The engine clicked into gear. I drove away without looking in the rear view. Big thanks for watching, you sneaky seniors. Subscribe to keep the coffee pot brewing revenge. Your ex-colleagues won't know what hit 'em.